want to talk about one of the stickings that I think is one of the most used and usable elements that I've found in drum set playing. This would be the sticking that is right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left. Now this sticking shows up in lots of places. It's basically paradiddle, left, right, right, left. You can think of those left, right, right, lefts as inverted doubles starting on the left. But basically it's just a paradiddle, left, right, right, left. This is a very basic sticking, and it's actually number 33 in George Lawrencestone's stick control. But if you're in the drum studio with your drum teacher and he asks you to pull out stick control, and you say, oh, I don't want to do stick control, it's boring, and you approach it with a bad attitude and you just play it with no kind of musical application whatsoever, it can be very stiff and have no music happening within it at all. There's really not any music happening there at all. So I want to try and take this and look at it from a more musical perspective. So we're going to step aside from this for a minute and look at it from a different angle. It's going to sound like I'm getting off track, but I promise you we're coming right back and talking about this sticking. I got the chance to see a clinic with one of my favorite drummers, Idris Muhammad, and he demonstrated how he would take some of the Mardi Gras Indian rhythms that he had heard as a kid growing up in New Orleans, and he would apply them to the drum set. What Idris would do is he would take the tambourine rhythms and he would play them on the hi-hat. Then he would start filling in that rhythm with the left hand. So taking the Mardi Gras Indian rhythm, which can also be called the cinquillo or the cinquillo, and it's basically 5 notes. It has its roots in Africa, and then it came through Haiti, and then developed in Cuba, where they named it the cinquillo, and then it came into New Orleans and was picked up by the Mardi Gras Indians. So this rhythm, very elementally, is bap ba da ba da ba ba da ba da ba ba da ba da ba. So with the Mardi Gras Indians, they'll play it with their fingertips, with their dominant hand, holding it in the left hand sometimes, and it'll sound like this. But in the New Orleans gospel church tradition, they'll play the rhythm with the tambourine in the dominant hand, and they'll work it against the hand like this, and they'll get rhythms that sound like this. So Idris would take that rhythm and he'd put it up here on the hi-hat. I'm gonna slow it down a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll start adding in the left hand. Once I've got that left hand added in to this cinquillo rhythm, the Mardi Gras Indians don't call it that, but that's what the Cubans call it. And this Mardi Gras Indian rhythm, we'll play this in the right hand, start filling it in with the left. Once I start filling it in with the left, then I'll start adding some buzzes and adding some accents. All the while, it'll still be this Mardi Gras Indian rhythm filled in with the left hand. So you'll notice I started adding the mambo bass drum pattern in the right foot as well. And I'll call this the trazio, or the 3-side of the clave, or the bayonne bass drum pattern. It's all different names for the same thing. So Idris would take this notion and he'd add it into grooves of his. One of these grooves in particular is his groove to Ain't It Funky Now with Grant Green. Grant Green would take James Brown tunes and they would play their instrumental versions of them. And this tune in particular, they did their own treatment with it. And the groove that Idris played on it, he would play this sticking on beats 3 and 4. So I'm going to play this groove now, and I encourage you to please check out Idris's version of this on Grant Green's Ain't It Funky Now. So now if you'll notice what Idris has done by taking that Mardi Gras Indian rhythm in the right hand and filling it in with the left, that has now created what we know as this right, left, right, left, right, left sticking, which is the same thing as number 33 in George Lawrence Stone's stick control. Over time, a lot of people have taken this sticking and applied it in many different ways. So I want to start showing you a little bit about how different people have taken this sticking and utilized it in their own way to create interesting things around the drums. In the 60s, Idris Muhammad became one of the most in-demand New York session guys, and he became the house drummer for Blue Note Records and Prestige and CTI. So what he would do is he would be playing in the studio, and then there's a young kid from Rochester, New York, who came down and has later cited that Idris Muhammad was an influence. So this young kid now, we all know by the name of Steve Gadd. So Steve Gadd will play some things that have this sticking in it, and he may have gotten this from Idris, he may have gotten it from somewhere else, but it's very interesting to me that he has cited Idris as an influence, and some of the stuff that he is doing is very similar to what Idris has done sticking-wise. Now I'm going to play a groove that's very much in the style of Steve Gadd. This is one of his signature type of things, and I'm going to show you where I think he might have gotten this from. So when I first started trying to learn this, I was like, what is that? So I decided, well, let me dive in and try to learn some of the Steve Gadd stuff that I hadn't learned yet. And so it was a rainy day in Germany, and we had a day off, and I didn't understand the language. I didn't speak the language. So instead of venturing out in the rain into a country where I didn't know anyone or know the language, I said, well, let me try to learn some stuff. So I went to drummerworld.com, and I pulled out the ironing board out of the closet. And this is the first time I did this. And I discovered that the ironing board could actually adjust to the height of the bed. And this has worked out great over the years, because I'll be sitting on the corner of a bed, bring out the ironing board, it adjusts. So some beds are higher, some beds are lower, but I can always get the ironing board where it needs to be. And in this particular instance, I took out the German phone book, which of course I couldn't read, and I put it on the ironing board, and I opened up my computer and said, let me try to learn something today off Drummer World. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try and check out some of this Steve Gadd stuff. Let me start with some of his signature stuff. And I watched this, and I was like, what is that? And then once I watched it in slow motion and I looked at the PDF of the transcription underneath, I said, wait a minute, okay, now that it's in slow motion, I can see what's going on. And oh, I recognize that sticking. That sticking is number 33 in George Lawrence Stone's stick control. Oh, and it's also the same sticking that Idris Muhammad is playing, but Idris came at it from a different angle. He came at it from the angle of the Mardi Gras Indians. So what's really interesting is that Steve is playing this fast in the front, slow in the back. So it's double time in the front, regular time in the back. So it's kind of like a drumming mullet in that it's fast in the front and slow in the back. So let me break this down and play it a little slower and show you that it's the same sticking, right, left, right, left, right, left in the front as it is in the last part of the measure as well. You'll notice that I'm putting my pandero on the snare drum upside down, and I've discovered over experimenting that this creates an instant, thicker, thuddier type of snare drum sound, and you can get an instant Al Jackson vibe with this, or in this case, kind of a Steve Gadd, more muffled kind of thing that he was going for in the 70s. But you can hear So what I noticed that was particularly interesting was that Idris Muhammad was playing this sticking on beats 3 and 4 of his groove. Steve Gadd was double timing it on beat 1 of his groove, but Gadd was also playing it on beats 3 and 4 of his groove as well. So there are times when Idris Muhammad and Gadd are doing basically the same thing within their groove on beats 3 and 4. So what I'll do now is play a few measures of Idris Muhammad, then I'll play a few measures of Steve Gadd, then I'll go back to Idris and back to Gadd. So now in just a few minutes, I've given you several hundred years of drumming history, tracking one rhythm from its roots in Africa to its development in Haiti, then further development in Cuba and its naming in Cuba, where they named it the cinquillo, but then that rhythm came and became a key element in the rhythms of the Mardi Gras Indians. And Idris Muhammad took that rhythm, took it from New Orleans, went up to New York with it, and once Steve Gadd got a hold of it and took it and played it double time at the front of his groove, the rest is history. Now I'd like to show how a lot of different other drummers have taken this one simple idea and used it in a lot of different ways. Stuart Copeland has taken this, put it up on the bell of the ride cymbal, and come up with some interesting ideas. In checking out my buddy Gil Sharon's DVD, Wicked Beats, all about Jamaican drumming, I've come to learn about Lloyd Knibb and how he is the godfather of all Jamaican drumming. Now, Lloyd developed a lot of things through ska and rocksteady and reggae, and one of the things he would do is add this rhythm on the bell of the hi-hat in some of his ska beats. So here's one of Lloyd's beats. I'm gonna count it off because the bass drum and the snare drum play on 2 and 4, and he's gonna add this rhythm on the bell of the hi-hat. 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's pretty obvious to me what started to happen once some of the white kids started to listen to the Scotalites and started moving it up from over here to the ride cymbal, the bell of the ride cymbal, and the snare. And by the white kids, I'm talking about Stuart Copeland and Neil Peart, because you can hear Neil Peart play some things very similar to this in the bridge to YYZ. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Mitch Mitchell used this as well with Jimi Hendrix on the tune Little Miss Lover. He played this sticking as a bombastic rock beat to intro the tune, so I'm going to show you that now. I'll play it again, and this time I'll move it over to the hi-hat and show you how it is the same sticking. Ian Paice used it on the cowbell for his groove to You Fool No One with Deep Purple. A few years ago, I was at an AM show and I walked up on my good friend and business partner in Crescent Cymbals, Jeff Hamilton, and he was demonstrating something to Jim Pettit from the Memphis Drum Shop. And what Jeff was showing Jim was that Mel Lewis would do this thing called the rub-a-dub, where he would mix right lefts and right lefts and come up with different ideas. So this sticking is one of the things that Jeff showed Jim that Mel would use. And as I was trying to see what it was that Jeff was showing Jim, I realized that, oh, wait a minute, I recognize that. I recognize that sticking. I've seen it before. So I started to connect all these dots, started to realize where this sticking had shown up in many different places and how it had been used by many different people. And some of these dots started to connect, and I started to understand this concept on such a deeper level. David Garibaldi has used this sticking and variations of it as well, and he's used this as the basis of the King Kong beat. You'll notice that some of this is very similar to what Idris Muhammad was doing in between the hi-hat, snare drum, and bass drum, but David Garibaldi and Mike Clark came upon it from a band called Redbone, and they had a song called Prehistoric Rhythm and the King Kong Beat. Now David took that and came up with many, many different variations and a lot of different great grooves, but one of the things that he would do to this is something that I will forever call the David Garibaldiization of something, which is where he takes right, right, lefts, and he turns them into a standard right, right, left, and he makes it into a Swiss triplet. What happens when you do this is that the Swiss triplet now creates this nice layered thing that's happening where it sounds like the two hands are playing different rhythms. They're playing something that's interlocking, but when you have them on two different sound sources, it really sounds like there's a lot more going on than what's really happening. Let me show you the standard triplet, right, right, left, right, right, left, right, right, left sticking, and then I'll add flams to the first note of it to make it into the Swiss triplet. Now, when you split this up between the voices in a sticking that is based on 16th notes, you really start to get some interesting textures. First, I'll play it without the flams, making it the Swiss triplets, then I'll add the flams, and make it into the Swiss triplet. So you'll notice that Steve Gadd will come down sometimes and get a backbeat here with the right hand when he's playing more of the double time ideas up here. He'll come down for a half time or regular time backbeat here. Now we know that Idris Muhammad was getting a backbeat here. So if we split up the hands in between two different snare drums, in theory, we should be able to get a fast backbeat with the left hand if we're playing in double time, and a slower backbeat in regular time or half time over here on our main snare. And I'll play that a little slower. Now you can use this as a variation in a drum and bass kind of context and come up with some different interesting things. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button as well as the notification bell so you can be notified when I post future lessons and videos here on my YouTube channel. I would love to have you come check out StantonMooreDrumAcademy.com. I have over 20 hours of video lessons there, as well as over 300 pages of written lessons as well. I would love to have you join and become part of the SMDA community. Thank you all for checking us out. See you down the line.